With age, words change. Not because the mind slows, but because wisdom no longer needs noise. Smart seniors learn which expressions protect peace, preserve dignity, and reveal quiet strength phrases shaped by experience, not impulse. There comes a quiet moment in later life when speed no longer feels like strength. The world still rushes, opinions still arrive quickly, and decisions are often expected on the spot. But somewhere along the way, many seniors discover that haste has cost them more than it ever gave. Words spoken too quickly, agreements made without reflection, reactions shaped by pressure rather than truth. Age does not dull the mind, it teaches it to pause. "I need some time to think" is not hesitation born of weakness, it is confidence earned through experience. It comes from knowing that clarity does not live in urgency. When you have lived long enough, you recognize how often the first response is not the wisest one. Time has shown that emotions settle, perspectives widen, and better answers often appear after the noise fades. Choosing to pause becomes an act of self-respect. "Let me sit with that" carries even deeper meaning. It suggests a willingness to listen, not only to others but to oneself. Sitting with something allows feelings to surface without judgment. It gives space for memory, intuition, and values to speak. Seniors who use this expression are no longer afraid of silence. They trust it. Silence becomes a companion rather than something to fill. In younger years, quick replies are often rewarded. There is praise for decisiveness, for having an answer ready, for appearing certain. But those rewards can come at a cost. With age, many people look back and see how often they agreed when they meant no, or reacted when they should have reflected. The pause becomes a way of protecting the future from repeating old patterns. These expressions also quietly shift power. They remove the pressure others may place on you to respond, decide, or commit before you are ready. Saying you need time does not require explanation. It does not invite debate. It simply states a truth. Your pace matters. In later life, this is not stubbornness, it is wisdom. There is also a gentleness in these phrases. They lower the temperature of conversations. They prevent misunderstandings from hardening into regrets. When emotions are high, a pause can be an act of care for yourself and for others. It allows conversations to breathe. It keeps relationships from being damaged by words that cannot be taken back. As the years pass, seniors often become more aware of how precious emotional energy is. Not every question deserves an immediate answer. Not every situation requires a reaction. Choosing when to engage becomes as important as choosing how. "I need some time to think" becomes a way of conserving inner balance. These pauses also reflect trust in one's own judgment. There is no rush because there is no fear of missing out. Life has already shown that what is meant to remain will wait. What demands urgency often lacks depth. Seniors who understand this are no longer pulled by pressure or expectation. They move in rhythm with their own understanding. In the end, these expressions are not about delay. They are about alignment. They allow thoughts, feelings, and values to come into harmony before action is taken. They protect dignity. They reduce regret. They honor a lifetime of learning. With age, words become fewer, but they grow heavier with meaning. And sometimes, the wisest thing a person can say is simply that they need time. There is a quiet strength that comes with realizing you no longer need to explain your life to everyone. For many seniors, this understanding arrives gradually, shaped by years of compromise, responsibility, and trying to meet expectations that were never truly their own. "That no longer works for me" is not a rejection of others. It is an acceptance of self. Earlier in life, saying no often came with long explanations. There was a need to soften decisions, to justify boundaries, to make sure no one felt uncomfortable, even if you did. Over time, this habit can become exhausting. Age teaches a different lesson. Comfort matters, energy matters, and not every choice requires approval to be valid. "That no longer works for me" carries clarity without aggression. It does not accuse or argue. It simply states a truth rooted in lived experience. Seniors who use this phrase have learned that circumstances change, bodies change, priorities change. What once felt manageable may now feel draining. Acknowledging that shift is not failure, it is honesty. "I'm comfortable with my choice" goes even deeper. It signals peace with oneself regardless of external reaction. This expression reflects an inner steadiness that no longer depends on agreement. There is no need to persuade, defend, or debate. Comfort replaces conflict. Confidence replaces anxiety. These phrases mark a turning point in emotional maturity. They show a willingness to stand gently but firmly in one's decisions. For seniors, this is often the result of decades spent learning what brings peace and what quietly erodes it. Comfort becomes a compass. When something consistently creates tension, resentment, or fatigue, it becomes clear that it is no longer worth carrying. There is also relief in these words. They free seniors from the weight of other people's expectations. Family traditions, social obligations, and long-standing roles can begin to feel heavy when they no longer align with one's needs. Saying something no longer works creates space. Space to rest, to choose differently, to live more truthfully. Importantly, these expressions do not close doors to connection. They actually protect relationships by preventing quiet resentment from building. When boundaries are clear, there is less confusion and fewer unspoken grievances. Others may not always agree, but they learn where you stand. That clarity often earns respect over time. "I'm comfortable with my choice" also reflects trust in one's own judgment. Seniors have seen enough outcomes to know that perfection is an illusion. Every choice carries trade-offs. Waiting for universal approval only delays living. Comfort does not mean certainty. It means acceptance. It means knowing that even if a choice is imperfect, it is still yours. These phrases also help seniors step out of old patterns. Many were raised to prioritize harmony over honesty, duty over desire. Age offers permission to rebalance those values. Boundaries become acts of care, not selfishness. Choosing oneself becomes an expression of wisdom, not defiance. There is something deeply calming about no longer needing to argue for your life. Conversations become simpler, decisions become lighter, the emotional noise quiets. Seniors who speak this way are not trying to control others. They are simply honoring their own limits. As time moves forward, these expressions become more frequent because life becomes more precious. There is less desire to spend energy where it is not returned. There is more willingness to choose peace, even if it disappoints someone else. In the end, these phrases are not walls. They are guideposts. They quietly signal that a person knows who they are, what they can offer, and what they can no longer carry. And that knowledge, earned slowly over a lifetime, is one of the greatest freedoms aging can bring. As years pass, many seniors discover that disagreement does not have to lead to division. "I don't see it that way" is a quiet, grounded phrase. It does not challenge another person's intelligence or intentions. It simply states that two perspectives can exist at the same time. There is no rush to correct, no need to persuade. Earlier in life, differing opinions often felt like threats. Disagreement could spark long explanations, raised voices, or lingering tension. Being right felt important, sometimes even necessary, to feel respected. With age, a different truth settles in. Not every difference needs resolution. Some only need acknowledgement. "I don't see it that way" allows a senior to stay present without becoming entangled. It protects emotional energy by refusing to escalate. The phrase carries self-respect without confrontation. It says, "I know my view, and I don't need yours to replace it." "We can agree to differ" goes a step further. It signals closure without hostility. This expression reflects an understanding that harmony does not require uniform thinking. People bring different histories, values, and wounds into conversations. Expecting alignment on everything becomes unrealistic and unnecessary. Smart seniors recognize that many arguments are not about truth, but about control, validation, or old patterns repeating themselves. Engaging in these exchanges often costs more than it gives. Peace becomes more valuable than victory. These phrases show restraint, not weakness. They demonstrate the ability to step back and choose calm intentionally. Walking away from an argument is not avoidance, it is discernment. It means recognizing when a conversation will not lead to understanding, only fatigue. There is also compassion embedded in these words. By agreeing to differ, seniors allow others their opinions without absorbing the emotional weight of them. It creates space for coexistence instead of collision. Relationships often feel lighter when disagreement is handled this way. With age, time feels different. There is less desire to spend it circling the same debates, defending the same positions, or reopening the same frustrations. Emotional energy becomes something to protect carefully. Conversations are chosen more thoughtfully. Silence becomes acceptable where explanation once felt required. These expressions also reflect confidence. Seniors who use them are no longer seeking validation through agreement. They trust their experiences enough to let others disagree without feeling diminished. That inner steadiness allows them to disengage without bitterness. "I don't see it that way" can also be an invitation, not a wall. When spoken calmly, it leaves room for dialogue without pressure. It keeps the conversation human rather than competitive. And when dialogue no longer serves, we can agree to differ. Gently brings it to rest. There is freedom in realizing that peace does not depend on convincing others. It depends on knowing when to speak and when to step back. Seniors learn that protecting emotional balance is an act of self-care, not selfishness. Over time, these phrases become tools for living more quietly and intentionally. They help seniors stay connected without being consumed. They allow relationships to continue without constant friction. In the end, choosing not to argue is often choosing oneself. It is a way of honoring limited time, emotional health, and the desire to live with ease. And that choice, made calmly and without drama, reflects a wisdom that only years can teach. As people age, one of the quiet freedoms they gain is the right to change their mind. "I've learned from that" is a simple phrase, but it carries the weight of years. It does not defend the past or apologize for it. It acknowledges that life teaches, sometimes slowly, sometimes painfully, and that wisdom often arrives after mistakes have already done their work. Earlier in life, admitting change could feel like admitting failure. There was pressure to stay consistent, to protect an image, to prove that earlier choices were correct. With time, that pressure loosens. Seniors begin to understand that growth is not betrayal of the past. It is respect for what experience has revealed. "I see it differently now" reflects this shift. It signals reflection rather than regret. It allows someone to stand in the present without being trapped by who they once were. This phrase carries no bitterness, no blame. It simply honors the fact that time changes understanding and that insight deepens as life unfolds. These expressions also show emotional maturity. They tell others quietly that learning never stops. A senior who says, "I've learned from that," is not reopening old wounds or seeking validation. They are stating a truth and moving forward. There is calm in that acceptance. There is also generosity in these words. They allow conversations to evolve without conflict. Instead of defending outdated beliefs, seniors make space for nuance. They show that it is possible to hold experience without hardening into it. Most importantly, these phrases reflect self-trust. They come from knowing that changing perspective does not weaken identity, it strengthens it. Seniors who speak this way are comfortable admitting that life has shaped them. They no longer need certainty at all costs. In later years, wisdom often looks like flexibility. The ability to revise old views, to soften rigid edges, and to say, "I see it differently now," is not loss, it is arrival. It is the sound of someone who has lived, reflected, and chosen growth over pride. With time, many seniors discover that contentment is not something added to life, but something uncovered once striving quiets down. "I'm content with what I have" is a phrase that sounds simple, yet it carries deep emotional resolution. It is not resignation, and it is not denial of hardship. It is the voice of someone who has measured their life carefully and found it sufficient. Earlier decades are often shaped by comparison. There is always someone doing more, earning more, owning more, or achieving something sooner. This constant measuring can quietly steal joy, even in moments that should feel complete. As people age, many begin to see how endless comparison keeps peace just out of reach. Saying I'm content with what I have is a way of stepping out of that race entirely. This expression reflects a mature relationship with desire. It does not mean curiosity or ambition disappear. Instead, it means they are no longer allowed to dominate emotional life. Seniors who speak this way have learned that wanting less can sometimes bring more calm, more gratitude, more presence in daily moments that once went unnoticed. Enough is enough carries a similar wisdom but with firmer edges. It is the boundary that comes after years of overextension. It may apply to work, to obligations, to possessions, or to emotional demands from others. This phrase is not spoken in anger, but in clarity. It marks the point where energy is protected rather than spent carelessly. Together, these expressions signal a settled inner life. They show that a senior has stopped chasing an idea of life that was always moving further away. Instead, they have turned toward what is already here, the familiar chair, the quiet morning, the relationships that feel steady rather than dramatic. There is dignity in knowing when something is sufficient. It requires honesty to admit that more is not always better, and courage to stop when the world encourages endless pursuit. Seniors who use these phrases are not giving up on life. They are choosing to live it fully, without unnecessary weight. In the later years, contentment becomes a form of intelligence. It is the ability to recognize abundance without excess, meaning without noise, and peace without constant effort. I'm content with what I have, and enough is enough are not endings. They are signs that someone has arrived at a quieter, steadier way of being, one shaped not by lack, but by deep understanding of what truly matters. This final pair of expressions carries the quietest power of all. I choose peace, and I'm at ease with this stage of life, are not phrases spoken to convince others. They are spoken to settle something inside. They reflect a turning point where inner harmony matters more than external approval, and where acceptance becomes an active, conscious choice. I choose peace suggests intention. It acknowledges that peace does not arrive automatically, especially after a long life filled with responsibility, compromise, and endurance. This phrase recognizes that conflict, worry, and agitation are often available, but no longer necessary. Seniors who use these words have learned that peace must sometimes be selected deliberately, even when circumstances remain imperfect. This expression often appears after years of emotional effort. Many older adults have spent decades resolving disputes, managing family dynamics, or carrying concerns that were never fully theirs to hold. Choosing peace means releasing the belief that everything must be fixed, explained, or settled to deserve calm. It is the permission to rest emotionally even while life continues to unfold. I'm at ease with this stage of life goes even deeper. It reflects reconciliation with time itself. Aging brings visible changes, quieter roles, and shifting identities. For many, this transition is uncomfortable at first, but when this phrase emerges, it signals that resistance has softened. There is no longer a need to compare today with yesterday or to mourn every change as a loss. Being at ease does not mean loving everything about aging. It means no longer fighting it. It is an acknowledgement that this stage has its own rhythms, insights, and freedoms. Seniors who speak this way understand that worth does not diminish with age, it simply expresses itself differently. Together, these expressions mark emotional closure, not as an ending, but as a settling. They show that the need to prove value, defend choices, or justify existence has quietly faded. What replaces it is presence, breathing more deeply, listening more patiently, living without the constant hum of inner resistance. These words reflect a life that has been fully engaged and is now fully inhabited. Choosing peace and being at ease are not withdrawals from the world. They are arrivals into a steadier, kinder relationship with oneself. In this final chapter of expression, smart seniors are not announcing conclusions. They are affirming something simpler and stronger. This is where I am, and I am okay being here.